giving 12 people the opportunity to look to see bird banding up close at BRI's River Point Bird Observatory. And I think we have 5 slots remaining. So if you're interested in that, you should sign up on our website right away. That's going to be from, I think, 8 to 9 in the morning. The River Point facility is in Falmouth. We'll probably hear more about where it is, but that's a really wonderful opportunity to see birds up close. So you can register for that on our website. On Tuesday, April 27th, we have 5 Bowdoin students who are going to be talking about their climate work that they're doing in Maine. And it's really interesting to hear the voices of young people who are not just learning about climate change, but are actually out there doing something about it at the local level. And I think it'll be really interesting because you know, a lot of what we hear about climate change is at the national level and, you know, big policies, and their presentations will be about what both, I think, research that they're doing and some other projects related to both climate adaptation at the local level, at the municipal level, and research around things like alternative transportation, bike ped lanes, climate justice, and most of their research has been done in Maine. So I think it'll be really inspiring to see what they're doing. And we're hoping that by watching it, you might get inspired to do some climate work on your own. And then in May, we have Derek York of Maine Fisheries and Wildlife will be talking about turtles of Maine. And you can register for all of those on our website. So I just want to give a shout out to the CREA members whose support makes these programs possible. This has been a really interesting year because Zoom has made it possible to bring a much broader array of speakers who, you know, might not want to travel to Topsham to do an in-person talk, but are happy to do it via Zoom. And we really love bringing you the voices of all the talented natural resource professionals that exist in and around Maine. So if you enjoy them, these speakers, I hope you'll consider joining CREA. New memberships keep us strong and keep these programs coming. And one final note, we run a summer day camp for young folks ages 6 to 16. And our summer camp is just about full. I think there are like 20 slots left. So if you have a youngster in your life who wants a fantastic camp experience, you better go on our website right away and register. We're also looking for CITs in the 14 to 16-year-old age range. That's a really fantastic leadership opportunity for 14 to 16-year-olds and counselors. So if you know anyone who would be a great counselor who's over 18, send them our way. So on to Patrick. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Patrick. I'll stop my share and let him put his screen up. Patrick Keenan graduated from Colby College in 2000 and earned a master's in zoology and physiology from the University of Wyoming in 2007. Over the last 20 years, he's participated in research and conservation work in many capacities as a student, bird biologist, project manager, volunteer and intern coordinator, researcher, collaborator, educator, and most recently, outreach and bird observatory director. Much of his work has taken place at the Biodiversity Research Institute, where he's worked since 2007, and where he's currently serving as the education and outreach director. Patrick enjoys time with his family, including hiking and camping, playing and coaching soccer, gardening, and keeping the family chickens away from the neighborhood fox. So, I have chickens too, so I can relate, although usually in my case, it's either raccoons or weasels. All right, so take it away, Patrick, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom about birds tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. And thanks to everyone who's here and for all the great work that CREA does. It seems like such an exciting group. And I don't give that many talks, but I was really happy when Pat reached out and asked if I would be willing to join you all this evening. And it's really nice to be here. I'm going to talk about a few things. The first thing I wanted to do was introduce Biodiversity Research Institute, which some of you may be familiar with. We're based in Portland, Maine, and we're a nonprofit wildlife research group. We're about 40 staff. We literally have conducted or are in the process of working on many, many projects. I use the number hundreds. That work occurs both locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. I think I'm going to share this quick little video, which is probably going to be fun. So let's see if technology works. Oh yeah, right. Stop share. Bear with me. I'm coming back. Yep, this might work. Okay. Oh yeah, it's going to work, I think.
BRI is a nonprofit wildlife research group headquartered in Maine that works around the world to identify and understand how stress in the environment threatens healthy wildlife populations. We began over 20 years ago developing capture techniques for common loons, a method we have employed to investigate the impact of mercury in a variety of habitats. We are now at the cutting edge of conservation science, investigating wildlife responses to human impacts on our environment, including oil spills and wind energy development. Changes are happening quickly in human culture and society. We believe that the negative impacts of these changes can be minimized through the application of solid science and innovation. At the heart of Biodiversity Research Institute, we are a group of scientists and professionals who care deeply about a healthy environment and the wildlife populations dependent upon it.
Right. Well, oh, that's exciting. That's very exciting. Wow. Just give me 1 second.
Every
I'm
plant
coming
and
back.
animal on Earth depends on other living organisms
That's
to survive.
interesting. And
How
fun.
these living things interact with the sun,
Why won't
air,
this?
water, and each other is called
All right,
an
I'm
ecosystem.
coming back, team. I promise.
Inside an ecosystem, the organisms work together to establish a balance that allows all of its members to thrive. When we talk about biomes, we mean a large group of similar ecosystems. All areas in a biome have similar plants,
I really am coming
animals,
back.
and weather.
Sorry, team.
There are many different
I've lost
biomes
myself
on
in
planet
Zoom.
Earth, both on land and in the water.
Can you hear that sound?
Let's explore some of the many.
It's great. It's really cool, isn't it? And unintended.
First, let's visit the marine biome.
All right.
The marine biome is made mostly.
I think this is what we call a zoom moment.
On Earth. It covers about 70% of the Earth's surface and is home to more than 230,000 known species.
But it's not giving me my spot back.
Animals that live in the marine biome include fish, sharks, octopus,
captivating,
seahorses.
Does that help, Pat?
Manatees.
I think I'll get there in a second.
And
It's
whales. some of
It's
many
biomes of the
others.
world.
The blue
Do
whale
you want to leave and come back in?
animal that has
Oh no, no,
on the
I'm
earth
I'm here.
and
It's
in our
all
marine
it's all
biome.
good. I'm just trying to.
Thousands of plant species live in the ocean too.
It's not letting me.
Ocean plants are extremely
Good thing we worked out all
because
these
they provide
details.
more than half of the oxygen on Earth. That's more
I
than
know how to do
every
it.
forest in the world.
It's magic.
Algae,
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I always think that that little moment of video is worth sharing because there's some really nice imagery. And it summarizes the work that BRI does quite well, I think, which is that we are very much hands-on biologists working to understand biology and the many impacts to wildlife. Most of the work that BRI does is actually hands-on work, capturing wildlife and finding ways to track and explore the health of wildlife. The mission, I think, was stated, but is to assess emerging threats to wildlife and ecosystems through collaborative research and to use scientific findings to advance environmental awareness and inform decision makers. And we organize ourselves into 3 different groups. We have what's called a Center for Mercury Studies, so examining mercury, which is a global contaminant in wildlife. And also we have a Center for Waterfowl Studies, which really stems and aligns with mercury studies quite well, especially with regard to understanding loons and their biology, and loons as an indicator of environmental health in lake systems. And so our director has done a fantastic job of developing methods for reliably capturing loons, assessing mercury levels on breeding grounds to understand the entire lake system health. We also have a sort of a catch-all group called the Center for Ecological and Conservation Research. And that covers an array of programs focused on raptor biology, mammal biology, understanding specific impacts or potential impacts to wildlife due to non-renewable or renewable energy sources, energy development. For example, we have a group and team that is currently working on understanding the impacts of wind energy development on wildlife, and is involved with industry and regulators in order to understand how to best site offshore wind energy in particular, as that becomes recognized as a potential energy resource for the future. So that's a little bit about BRI. I also wanted to take a couple of minutes and just put some information out there about birds and the threats to birds, which are so many. So I pulled some quick headlines, mostly from really like liberal leaning and groups such as the Audubon Society, but some headlines. So thousands of birds killed at the liquid natural gas plant. And this is something that happens. Birds are attracted to these effluent fires, and when they are migrating, they're drawn in and they can in fact get burned and be found on the tarmac. We have a virus caught in common eiders causing die-offs on the Cape. Recent study suggests that 1 in 4 birds is missing in the last 50 years. We have cats killing 3.7 birds annually. Maybe more, maybe less, but that's the working estimate. And, you know, we have Deepwater Horizon oil spill, which is estimated to have impacted over 1 million birds. And that is a event that BRI was involved in assessing the damage to wildlife due to that oil spill. The reason I did this is to put forth that the threats to birds are everywhere, and it gets very confusing, I think, especially for citizens to understand what the course of action is. So we're not exact, and we're actively working on all of these aspects at BRI in one way or another. But I wanted to bring us down to sort of the foundation of some work that we do, which is local work, but also reaches across borders at River Point Bird Observatory. And this is probably the most forward-facing work that we do at BRI in terms of forward-facing to the public. We operate a bird banding and bird observatory station at a property that is town-owned in West Falmouth. Some of you might be familiar with the area. It is off exit 53 of Route 95, right where there is a Hannaford shopping plaza, Dunkin' Donuts. Pretty much everything you need is right there, including if you traipse across the tracks over a small bridge, there's a nice red barn. And on many days during migration season and in the summer, there are biologists there, and they're doing things like trying to enhance our understanding of bird biology research in our community. They're trying to create awareness about the natural world and promote scientific literacy. And they're working to direct actions that support the habitats and species that we value. And we set those as sort of like the principles for River Point Bird Observatory when we established that effort back in 2011. It's always good to have, something to guide you. I also wanted to put some context here. I'm sorry for all of the words on this slide, but globally, most scientists agree that we've identified over 10,000 species of birds. Some people like to think that there are probably almost twice that many that are unrecognized or are deserving of species status. We don't have to talk too much about that, but I think it's important to acknowledge that we are still continually learning about the species that exist on the planet. Of those 10,000 recognized species, 248 families of birds exist, and 1,450 are considered globally threatened by BirdLife International, with 220 species globally endangered. The work that we do at River Point does not deal with very many species. We have to date captured 113 species in our nets. And at the property, according to eBird, which is all of the bird watchers that use eBird, there have been 191 species documented at that site. The reason I point this out is to recognize that the world is a really big place, but also I like to think that the work that we do, even with the species and that we do capture and on site, is valuable and meaningful. So what the heck is bird banding? What is this gray catbird doing? And why is it in that net? I hope you all can see that this bird is captured in a net. It's hanging there unharmed. And people like my colleague, Kate Williams, are fairly adept at removing birds from nets. It takes a fair amount of practice in order to put them in small bags where the bird is safe and unharmed. And you see certain tags on each of these bags, which notes the specific net that a bird was located and found in. We are then able to, in the hand, identify the bird. This one is kind of laid out for you, so it's not always this easy, but as you can see, that what we're really doing here is comparing the bird to the picture. And looks like this could be either a Louisiana water thrush or a northern water thrush. The world may never know. The next step when we're banding a bird is to apply a band. I think this video works. I'm not sure if people are able to see that, but it's a very quick process where the band is applied to the bird on the tarsus bone. I'll just show that again. Aha. We're clearly working with that same catbird. We inspect the bird. So when we have a bird in the hand, we are quite able to inspect it up close, looking at its feathers carefully. We can see here, this looks to me like a hermit thrush, but it could be any of the Catharus thrushes. But you see these, there are these buffy little tips that indicate to us as bird banders that this bird is likely in its second year if it is in the springtime. And that's not something that you can readily always see if you're looking at a bird through binoculars. Again, we see things like this rose-breasted grosbeak wing, which has begun to molt or replace feathers. And we see those fresh black feathers contrasting with the brown feathers that are retained from the bird's prior year. So this is a second year male rose-breasted grosbeak. So why do we ban birds? Well, because we can get a lot of information about individual animals. We can make measurements of birds. We can mark them so that we know that it is the same bird and not that we are seeing and documenting, and not 50 different birds that are just all over the place. That takes the form of measuring a bird, such as in this photo, measuring this American robin's wing. We're always making notes. This is my friend Ed Jenkins, who some of you may have bumped into. He's clearly noting that this is a recapture bird and making some notes about where it was found, what time of day it is, how much the bird weighed. This is a team working away. As you can see, Kate, who to me is on the left, is banding a bird. My friend Robbie in the back is using calipers to measure a portion of the bird, probably its tarsus. And let's see. And it looks like we're inspecting the amount of fat or the cloaca or breeding condition of a bird as well. Various tools on the table. So we get all of this information. We can see the state of birds' breeding status, and we can make measurements. Sometimes those measurements in terms of size might help us determine whether a bird is a male or female. Additionally, handling birds provides opportunities for close inspection and potential tissue sampling. So for example, these two photos show birds, a gray catbird and an eastern towhee that have ticks on their faces. And we've actually been working with Maine Vector-Borne Disease Lab to gather ticks from birds and have those ticks tested for different diseases, including Lyme disease, Powassan virus, and Babesia anaplasma, in order to better understand if birds have a role in disease transmission in ticks. I think I have another little video that could be fun to show the removal of a tick. I'll play that a couple times and talk while it goes. The other aspect of ticks and birds and their interactions is that we get a very good sense of the timing of emergence of different life stages of ticks. For example, as I go back, these are mainly nymph life stage ticks on these birds. So they're not the adults, they're actually like blood feeding nymphs. So Without going into lots of detail about the life cycle of ticks, they start as an egg, like all of us. They work through a larval stage and they get a blood meal, and then they go through metamorphosis into a nymph, and then they have another blood meal and they go through another metamorphosis into an adult. And the timing of those phases differs annually. Usually right now we're seeing adults that have survived the winter. They're about to probably get a blood meal, lay eggs. And so then we phase in with larvae probably in like May, June, nymphs in July. The timing varies. And then adults again throughout the year, but also peaking typically and start moving around a lot in October. So we have some pretty interesting data about ticks and birds. Aha. And that's not possible by just simply watching a bird. Also, we can add different types of tools to the bird, either for resighting or, in the case of some of BRI's work, attaching transmitters to birds that then fly away and document their whereabouts. For example, we have a nice photo of a veery. This bird is mauve over silver, black over blue. As you can see, those nice color bands, which are visible then to an observer with binoculars if they are adept and in the right place. So we have a banded and color banded population of veery at River Point. So if you, or when you visit, you can look around and perhaps spot an individual that is known. So for example, we know the date that this bird was first encountered. Obviously, banding birds is helpful to reliably assess the age of birds. I'm just showing this one figure here from 2011. When we catch a veery in, say, the spring, we're able to identify it to an age class. We know that it was not hatched this year. So we know that it's either an AHY, meaning an after hatch year, meaning it hatched after last year. A second year, SY, or you might see also the ASY, meaning after second year. And that's about as good as we get if we go out on any given day and look at some birds. We can get their age. However, after we do this for a few years, we start seeing the same birds returning, and we know when they were banded. So we start to build a different picture of what the age structure is in the population. As you can see, we have some birds that are at least 6 years old or after 6 years old. Just a few years later, this is from 2015, and I haven't updated the graph, but we do have a veery that has lived as long as 9 years. And it's important to understand the age of birds and the demographic composition of the population in order to appropriately try to conserve species. So that's some useful and interesting information that we get from bird banding. You also get awards like this one, a certificate of appreciation, when we do very rarely catch a bird that already has a band from a different location. We can report that to the Fish and Wildlife Service, or USGS rather, and the bird banding lab, and we tell them we caught this bird, it had this band already, we did not band it, and they give you this lovely certificate. In this case, it was a common yellowthroat that we encountered in 2011 that was originally banded on Plum Island in 2008. So we know that some of the birds that visit Plum Island also come to Maine. Originally, that was one of the goals of bird banding, was to understand using bands where birds went. It turns out that the number of encounters of birds that are banded in one place and captured in another are very, very low. That said, one thing that we have found from banding is that many of the catbirds that we band don't make it back. And sometimes when they do, they are found dead on people's front porches from flying into windows or something like that. So something like 5,000 catbirds, we have about 5 that have been located on people's porches with a band that's been reported to USGS. And so we know that that happens. Again, another threat. A lot of those birds that do fly into windows are likely scavenged quite readily. There's a large building in Portland that was recently built, and if you arrive there during migration at dawn, you can see the gulls lining up, waiting to scavenge the carcasses of the birds that fly into the windows of that building. But that sounds sad. I'm sorry if I'm sounding negative. These are just the realities for wildlife and for birds. Our favorite part of the whole banding process, well, might be showing the bird to a few people who happen to be standing around, but it's undoubtedly releasing the bird. This is one of our interns over the years, Mary Caffrey, who is releasing what is certainly a Cooper's hawk, though I wouldn't necessarily know that unless I banded the bird and measured its legs a bit. This is a slow motion video. So it's not just Mary, it's just a slow motion video where the bird is taking flight. You can actually see the band on its leg. Ooh. This video was taken not at River Point, it was actually taken at Wells Reserve, but we do catch the occasional Cooper's or sharp-shinned hawk at River Point. But I thought this video would be nice to share. Don't look straight at the sun. Yeah, it perches in that tree. Yep. So all this happens by people like Mary or Alex or Dana or Kate, who you know, are dedicated folks who wake up early in the morning and spend some time outside, have really gentle hands, enjoy talking to people. You can see in the background, we have various posters and things. Oh, look, there are more people. There's Katie Fernald, Kevin, Tyler, whole team. Yeah, more interns and volunteers and helpers who also learn, and then they go and they do other things that might be similar. For example, oh, I'm blanking on a name, but this young gentleman works at Jackson Labs right now. Jennifer, who's on the right, is now doing some shorebird work in Delaware Bay. And Towson College, I forget where she went, but so we're back to River Point. We've now banded something like, or handled roughly 25,000 individual birds, which is meaningful, I suppose. About 5,000 of those are catbirds. And we do a lot of bird work, but again, sort of along the lines of our mission is we also are working to connect people to bird conservation. So hopefully I'm doing some of that now. But this is obviously before everyone was wearing masks. We could just generally frolic around the banding lab and discuss birds. This is my old friend Stella Walsh showing some MECA students what is clearly but difficult to see a ruby-crowned kinglet. And you know, this one guy has a really bright future. He even has sunglasses on inside. It's so bright. We talk to students and we use the real words that we use to describe birds, we work through the parts of the bird. As you can see, this chestnut-sided warbler is really happy. It actually hung out in this gentleman's hand for a second so everybody could get a good look before it flew off. This is probably early June. That looks like a male to me. I mean, the bird, chestnut-sided warbler. Yeah, more friends at the banding station. This is actually some of these folks help make some of the nets that are used in research as well. So they came out to see how the nets work in the field. Oh man, this is a great one. Yeah, lots of images today. This is great. I think people may be able to recognize the species of bird. Again, slow motion, really fun. Slowly. We've caught about 4 pileated woodpeckers over the years. And it's usually a little bit of a frightening experience in the sense that they're fairly large and they make a lot of noise. So they're not like your typical warbler or thrush. So this is the type of thing that we're fortunate to bear witness to after we wake up at 3:30 in the morning to band birds. And you can too. So one thing that I was going to do, but I'm not actually going to leave this presentation, but I wanted to do a quick little walkthrough about what we call the River Point Data Explorer. I'm not going to go to our website to show that, but it's kind of a cool little tool where you can log on and you can review our actual data, which is available, and you can compare, say, the timing of migration of different species, and look at the types of birds that we catch with an abundance associated with that for different time periods. So we could go on and say, let's see, we could go on and say, what do the banders catch on April 24th in preparation for the Korea visit? And you'd see that, yeah, we catch a bunch of chickadees, some white-throated sparrows. If things are going well, maybe we catch a robin or two. And that, I think, is something that is sort of a neat effort to help people understand, what's on the ground and how the season changes as it progresses in the spring and in the fall. I also just have a couple notes here that, we've banded a fair number of birds. About 17,000 birds have received bans, and we've handled about over 25,000 birds. So what I want to just clarify is when we initially catch a bird the first time, we put a band on it. And then we might catch that bird 5 times in a season or never again. And so handling is the description of like we've handled that many birds, whereas the 17,000 or so banded birds are actual bands placed on birds. So it's just a subtle difference. One thing that is important for everybody to realize is that we do see the same birds coming back year after year to nest at River Point, which is something that I'm sure you see at Korea. You just may not have the tool for tagging and recognizing and confirming that it is the same individual. So this is Jim Peruk with some students from St. Joe's talking about this black and white warbler. These were some nice students. Not all of them are nice, but usually they are. Christina, again, she's got a beautiful black-capped chickadee there talking to students. We're pretty much equal opportunity educators. We don't really do a lot of formal education, but we'll talk to anybody about birds for sure. All right, this brings me to a set of slides. I don't know if people are able to use the chat bar. I'm not sure, suddenly I'm not sure if I can see the chat bar while I am, ooh, that's interesting. I don't know if I can see the chat bar. Ah, I can. This is great news. So, oh, somebody identified the building. Hey, we all live. Sorry, I'm seeing the chat bar. I'll work through those questions soon. I'm going to play a few slides, and if people feel like they want to type the species in, that would be great. Also, now is a good time for some questions if you feel inclined towards questions. In fact, I see a question. Pat Maloney just asked, do ticks shorten the lifespan of birds? That's a really good question, and we don't really know. We don't really know. Oh, why so many catbirds? Catbirds are generally abundant. They also are regular. Where our nets are about 10 feet. They go up to about 10 feet off the ground. And catbirds are, while they are brilliant at being catbirds, they're not good at avoiding the nets. And it just so happens that where the habitats of River Point are very favorable to catbirds. Okay, here we go. No drum roll required. Ooh. Wow, we're starting off with a real doozy. This is not a feeder bird. I don't see anyone typing.
Is it a morning warbler?
It is a beautiful, beautiful
Morning warbler.
morning warbler. Sorry, I did it. So you see this beautiful shrouded head, olive back, yellow belly. One of the things that occurs even when very, very skilled bird watchers and knowledgeable bird watchers appear to see bird banding, sometimes they are really confused by the look of the bird. Oh, this is a nice bird. You can even see in this photo near the base of the bill, you can see some small modified feathers called rictal bristles. And this bird is a Wilson's. Yeah, there we go. All right, it's working. It's working. Monique and John. Hi, John. Good to see you. I mean, maybe not see you, but this is a bird that almost no one ever sees. Literally, almost no one ever sees this bird. If you're a bird watcher, this is often a nemesis bird. It is a Connecticut warbler. Yeah, it has this eye ring that's visible and pretty bold. All right, we're gonna keep going. I could do this all day, so if you have to go, I understand. This is a great bird as well. It has what we could call an eye ring or a speculum, that yellow in front of the eye, and the yellow eye ring tends to white in the back. And it is a Canada warbler. All right. Yeah. So this is one of the earlier warblers to arrive in spring, and it blends well with tree bark and loves to be, and it is black and white. Nancy, you got it. I would suspect that they would be arriving as early as maybe early April. So this is one of the earlier warblers, maybe early April. Most warblers arrive late April through the end of May, beginning with things like black poles, then working through and ending with black pole warblers and redstarts. Ah, wow. As if we knew. The lighting on this photo is kind of cool. Yeah, so this is an adult male redstart. It's black and orange, where the young males are gray and yellow, and the females are gray and yellow. And the males, when they return in the spring, often will have, in their second year, will often have little flecks of feathers. I guess I could have put a photo of one of those guys up. Ah, somebody's guessed this already. Now's the time. This is a crowd pleaser. Also recognized for its isolated tail spots. Oh, Pat, I had Nancy Chandler had chimed in. Yes, it is a magnolia warbler. Oh, yellow rumped is a good guess. Good guess. Okay, now we're on to some of our favorite non-warblers. Anybody know, can anyone detect this buffy, streaky flank and upper breast? Very clean look. The bill and forecrown. Lincoln sparrow. It is a Lincoln sparrow, yes. Good answer. This is up close and personal with perhaps my favorite sparrow. And notably, the white backdrop is sort of meaningful for this bird because we do not see them ever in the summer. And it has a bicolored lower mandible. Yes, Monique, it is an American tree sparrow. They're probably gone for the season at this point. Usually by the first week of April, they have departed. This is a bird that a lot of people don't often see. And we've only caught one in 10 years at River Point, and we caught it in a net that was sort of adjacent to a feeder in late fall. And the trick here is the eye ring and this little bit of rufous on the shoulder or wingtip. Yes, it is a Vesper sparrow. Okay. Yeah, that's a chickadee. Okay. Anybody know who this is? It is a green heron, yes. And it was, interestingly, we can see from the photo on that front wing that's facing us, you can see where some of the feathers are retained and really quite worn. So we determined that this was, in fact, a second year, but they do nest at River Point above a little peeper pond. And we've caught two over the years. And it's really quite a fascinating and lucky thing to be able to see a green heron. Oh, you know, as you see, we're shifting back to the people. These are some TD Bank folks that came to help us out one day. They did some groundskeeping, some trail work, some nest box erecting. As you can see here, the photo is not great, but there are some nest boxes in the field, and that's another thing that we've been working at River Point. We put up about 20 nest boxes. We're really trying to attract tree swallows in particular, because tree swallows are part of a group of aerial insectivores that over probably the last 40 or 50 years have declined tremendously. And that has coincided with the decline of insects generally, globally. But also because of the forest dynamics in New England and forestry practices, there aren't a lot of cavities for tree swallows to nest in. So nest boxes are a good way of providing nesting opportunities for for tree swallows. And so we manage those boxes, and we're up to about 10 to 12 pairs of tree swallows annually at River Point. And we've tried to work with some others, other groups on putting nest boxes up and making sure that they're managed appropriately. And nest boxes don't grow themselves. So we have folks like these IDEX team builders who came out and helped us clean and replace and resite some nest boxes. So it's a real effort by many. Oh yeah, this is what happens inside the box. Outside here we have a lovely tree swallow. We do go in and we will monitor the boxes and band adults and nestlings opportunistically when we can. We have had one female tree swallow come back to the exact same box 3 years in a row, which is, I think, quite a note. But I guess I also kind of find my way back home each day as well. So it's not that amazing. Okay, well, if anyone has any questions, you can unmute yourself or type them in here. I overplanned the talk. Oh, so I'm gonna skip the next section because we don't need to be here until 9 o'clock, I don't think. Okay, Elizabeth has asked, how long in a day are your nets open? Great question. We band from about dawn until about noon. We go for a 6-hour period, and then we close the nets down. And we wrap them up and then use flagging tape to secure them closed. But we leave them in place because if we had to put the nets up and take them down each day, that would take too much time for us to be able to manage the operation. Oh, how high do swallow boxes need to be? Good question. They can be put up on very tall poles. Typically, the standard box is about head height or so. There are different methods for swallow boxes. Sometimes people have like a baffle or something to keep predators from, climbing up the pole. Sometimes that's necessary. It's usually recommended, but it's not always necessary depending on the location. Let's see. I'm going to do something. Are there other questions? I do hope that if you are able, you have an opportunity to come to River Point. I know that we did, oh, sorry, there's another question. We do have kind of a limit, especially these days for COVID, on the number of guests that we invite. So as I told Caroline and Jenny, if there is a lot of interest, we are more than willing to try to find another day or time for, say, family groups or something. I think we have the April 24th as a date. One thing that happens is that we do not band in the rain. So we've reserved May 1st as a rain date for a group. So hopefully that would work. And let's see, did I read about Wisdom? Oh yeah, so Wisdom is correct, was banded as something like older than 70 years and is still laying eggs. And recently there's been a lot of interest in Wisdom for multiple reasons. One, because the individual who banded Wisdom originally recently passed away. So Wisdom has outlived her bander, but also because of the plight of birds with regard to plastics pollution in the open ocean. A lot of seabirds have been suffering because of just the rampant pollution and picking up things that they think are food items off the surface of the water that are actually pieces of plastic and feeding them to their young. And what a great story though. And what a great story of bird banding too. Okay, there's a question from Stephanie about, was the green heron caught in the lightweight net you use for passerines? And yes, it was. So, and that speaks to sort of nets generally. The nets that we use are a very fine mesh thread, as you could see in the photo, I think. Feeling the netting is always the best way to assess it. Even though the netting is lightweight, the netting is actually very strong. It often will overlay. It does get some holes, so yeah, we do have to repair nets sometimes. And we make some hard decisions to burn a net on occasion in order to dispose of it if it does have too many holes or is unusable. And along those lines, as we work with interns, we're very careful to help them slowly and gradually obtain the skill to safely first handle and then safely remove birds from the net, because it is a very delicate process, sort of like a living puzzle. But it also is very achievable for someone with even modest dexterity. Okay, have we done any habitat work at River Point to encourage birds? That is a great question. One of the things that has happened at River Point by the town is that they have been managing the property for native species and against non-native plants through a removal program for the last decade. The last couple of years have been very hard for them to keep up with that. But the property is already well suited for birds. It has a rich understory. It has a lot of dogwood, a lot of berry bushes, berry trees, and then it has a matrix of fields that are, back in the 90s, there was corn being grown at River Point, and it has now transitioned to a native meadow with goldenrod, asters, some invasives, I guess bindweeds and invasive, but it is a very, very productive set of habitats. And it exists on soil that is a marine clay sediment. So it's a very, very, rich set of habitats and really good for birds. In fact, in the fall, we see a tremendous number of insects and many warblers even foraging in the fields, and not just sparrows, but warblers foraging in the fields, presumably eating a lot of insects. Okay, how many nets do we have? We operate up to 17 nets at one time. We have sort of two different loops. We have one loop that's 10 nets and then another 5 that are a little further away. And that's about what we do. Sometimes we will operate only 10 nets. We adjust our protocol for the safety of birds based on the number of people we have and the weather conditions. There's a question, are the fields mowed to maintain them? Yes, they are. The town has prioritized managing the fields, and they have an open space plan whereby they mow the 1/3 of the field a year, so that it all gets mowed every 3 years. And that, there's a good question. Is someone watching a net all the time? Basically, how long does a bird typically hang in the net before being removed? So we do not have people watching the nets at all times. We do what we call a net run, and we do that every 20 to 30 minutes. So a bird could be in a net, if it flew in as we walked by, it could be in a net for up to 30 minutes during the migratory season. And then we would be back and removing it. and then that bird goes in a bag, walks all the way back. Our protocol is to never keep a bird for longer than 2 hours. Typically, the processing time for banding a bird is rather short. If there's a group and we happen to be taking our time and showing different aspects of the bird, it can be a little bit longer. And there are very few occurrences where we even come close to anything like the 2 hour limit. However, there are days where we may catch a large number of birds, and then we work rampantly to band and process them, and we call all of our friends who are bird banders and have them show up so that the birds keep moving, if that makes sense. Okay. Are the birds pretty calm when they're in the net, or are they struggling? It's variable. Most birds, once they're caught, don't struggle very much in the net. And also when we are handling birds, one of the things we do is we work to secure the bird efficiently and so that the bird doesn't struggle. I always describe this as if someone were to have an older brother and they put a head and their older brother put them in a headlock, if it was like a loose little headlock, you're gonna maybe struggle. But if the older brother is really secure and sure about the headlock, then you're just going to sit comfortably knowing that you're trapped. And I think, that's kind of how we approach handling birds, is a very secure grip without obviously squeezing the bird or harming it, but holding it such that it knows that it is not going to be eaten right away anyway by us, and B, isn't going to escape because it is caught. But, and, I will preempt that, through all of this process, we are actively, removing birds from their normal life. And we take that pretty seriously. We have permits in place, and we, at BRI in particular, we have a set of protocols. We work with animal care and use and committees, as well as permitting agencies, to ensure that we're doing things appropriately. And then the one good thing about banding birds is that there is this overriding bird banding code of ethics, which we all sort of, put our hand and swear by. And that basically says that we are doing things for the birds safely, and that any individual is always welcome to question another person about their intent or action, and that we all communicate directly and openly and think about what we're doing and review our processes so that we know that we're doing the right thing and we can change. Oh, there's a good question. What do you love most about your job? That's a good question. I like two things. I like it when I like sort of the planning phase of a project where you have a goal and you can pull together a plan using your experience to, figure out how to catch a certain bird or catch a certain number of birds for a particular study. And I also really enjoy the multi-layers of sort of operation that we have at the banding station. And by that, I mean, I enjoy working with, say, college level students to train them to learn about birds. I also enjoy talking to, say, the Falmouth third graders who come. I also enjoy seeing the college students engage with the Falmouth third graders and share the information that they have been learning over the course of the season. And I also kind of do like, I don't always love getting up early in the morning in that moment, but I do really love the early morning on site once I get there and I've had a little bit of coffee and there's a certain peacefulness and focus on the work. Where do we get our funding? Good question. So I'm going to answer that in two ways. One is BRI largely, yeah, exactly. BRI has a lot of different funding sources, ranging from work as a government service provider. So those could be any agency, whether it's the EPA, Fish and Wildlife, National Park Service. We do some work that is directly, and there's also state level work that we do. We do work that is directly contracted by industry as part of, usually that's part of a regulatory process. And then some foundations support BRI. This slide talks about some of the early work that when we were getting started at River Point, we received funding from the Horizon Foundation, Maine Community Foundation, Davis Conservation Foundation, Jane B. Cook Charitable Trust. Maine Audubon has been a collaborator and has brought groups out to join us and learn. And then there are just so many volunteers and friends that have helped and supported the work at River Point. The other group that has supported the work at River Point is the Association of Field Ornithologists, through a program where BRI manages the production of mist nets and the sale of some research supplies. And the funds from that go back to River Point and also to the Association of Field Ornithologists, which is a great group and basically a scientific professional society for those involved with field ornithology. I don't know if that answered the question. Frankly, I don't know if any of this is working, but everyone seems mostly very quiet.
Patrick, I have a question. This is Caroline. Excuse me. I saw recently.
And Ron, I really like this comment. It's a great time to be up, not a great time to get up. The early mornings. Yeah, that is precisely what I was trying to say. I'm just going to scroll through and see if there are other questions while I play this little video of a red start on a coolish day. This is kind of slow motion, so it seems like, oh yeah, that's definitely the end. Yep, definitely. So that was a red start, just making its way.
Pat, can you hear me?
Okay.
No, I think Pat has lost our sound.
I can hear you.
Really?
Let's see, I don't have that much more. I mean, I'm happy to answer questions. I could go back through some slides if they're of interest. Okay, let me see if I can stop. I have an idea. I'll stop share.
Can you hear me? Pat, can you hear me?
Can you hear us
No.
now?
Does anyone have any questions that they want to have off of the chat or in Zoom? Unmute yourself.
You can't hear us, right? I can hear whoever was talking, but I see everybody else is muted.
Well, I think it's important. I think I thanked a lot of people generally, but I want to thank all of you for bearing with the presentation. It was a little different. Usually I put more slides and tables and graphs, which are fun, but I think actually photos and some of the videos are kind of definitely interesting. And I guess the last thing would be to make sure that you talk to Jenny and or Caroline and come out and see us in a few weeks, because it's much more fun to be in person. I know we can manage things safely by wearing masks. Many people are already oh, I thought Ron was just joking with me.
Can you hear me?
Do I have to do something? I don't know. Ask to unmute.
Pat, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Oh, I know what happened. Oh,
Can you
so
hear
people
us?
are talking.
Yes.
Can
I can hear you now.
We could all talk about you and you didn't know.
I know, I feel silly. I was getting some feedback earlier, so I turned my volume down really low and I forgot.
Pat,
Yeah.
I have a question. This is Caroline, about bird strikes in windows. I was doing some research because our office space has these really big windows, and we've had a couple of bird strikes that thankfully have all survived. But I read somewhere that if you hang paracord outside the window 4 inches apart all the way down the length of the window, that can help. Have you heard of that solution?
I've heard like vertical lines and threads. I haven't heard paracord, but it kind of works a little bit, I think. There are some like UV decals and tapes that work pretty well. I think the American Bird Conservancy supplies those. I haven't heard paracord in particular, but I know that vertical line structure is something that birds try to avoid. And that's also true for, say, some nest boxes. There can be challenges with placing nest boxes when you're trying to attract things like tree swallows or bluebirds, but house sparrows are in the area. You can kind of create a real trap for the native species, but people have experimented with basically almost like a monofilament shower curtain. So again, those vertical strands hanging on some type of metal coat hanger that's around in a circle. And what's interesting is the tree swallows supposedly fly through that and will get into the box, but house sparrows do not do that. They don't like the monofilament hanging down. And so they avoid those nest boxes. And I heard that from a trusted source. He was a reliable 20-year-old who'd done an experiment. So I trust him.
Well, I just want to remind people, as I said at the beginning, for people who came late, that you can sign up for the visit to River Point on the 23rd. I think it's a Saturday at 8 o'clock. You can sign up on our website, and if we hit the max of 12, I know there were 5 slots left. And if you hit the max and you can't register because it's filled up, just email one of us and we'll put you on a waiting list. Because sometimes people have to cancel.
Patrick, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm actually Mary with my husband's computer name. This has been fabulous. Thank you. How big of a field, how much area do you need in a field for tree swallow nest boxes to attract tree swallows or bluebirds?
That's a good question. You don't need much, honestly, especially for bluebirds. Bluebirds do like they like pine needles, so they put pine needles in their nests, and they can find them, but that's just a thing.
Oh, I got lots of pine.
How large a field?
For instance, I have behind my house, I'm in a mostly wooded neighborhood, but there's a large, really big, it's 4 septic systems in one field. So it's a fairly big field.
Oh, yeah. So I would say tree swallows are a little bit less likely. They really do like more open. I would say like 5 acres or so would be maybe a minimum. Honestly, I'm sort of throwing that out there as a comparison. I'm doing some like spatial math and visualization right now. I think like 5 acres would be reasonable. The more area you have, the more boxes, and then the more likely tree swallows are to really like colonize. They're semi-colonial, but they like to be with each other. I think that they don't put all their eggs in one basket, so to speak. So the studies have shown that the male and female, the female that's incubating has eggs from herself and other males, not just the male that keeps feeding her. So, and there are lots of reasons why that is, from sort of a genetic diversity reasoning. I don't know if that answered your question about space.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it did. Thank you. I have one other quick question. I had read about beetle sweeping that nuthatches do, and I actually observed it once. Have you ever seen it? And I don't understand why they
sweeping?
Beetle sweeping, where it's a white-breasted nuthatch, and it takes a beetle in its bill, and it sweeps the roof of the birdhouse with the beetle.
Oh, interesting.
I had read about it, I think, in the Birder's Handbook, and then I saw it on one of my nest boxes, and it really looks like it's sweeping, but it's rubbing it on the roof of the nest box. Has anybody else ever seen this or heard of it?
Interesting.
Okay, well, now I'm gonna have to Google it so y'all don't think I've been having cocktails during the presentation.
Oh no, I know you're having a cocktail during the presentation. That's great. That's why it was at 7 o'clock, I think. I was just joking. Okay. I wonder if it has to do with like, I mean, some beetles are predators. If it has to do with trying to send a signal to other insects to stay out of the nest box. Huh, that's I don't know, Mary.
So I just quickly Googled it, and the first thing that came up was this article, like a white paper, use of blister beetle in bill sweeping by white-breasted nuthatch. I'll put it in the chat. I am not making this up. So.
Oh yeah, no, you would never make that up.
It was pretty wild. It's basically they're rubbing a dead beetle on there. It would be like if we all went outside and put some dead rodent in our mouth and then rubbed our front welcome mat with it. That's what they were doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the nest boxes do get parasites, and they need to be cleaned out. Some people actually wash them with or spray them with a bleach solution or something. We don't do that at River Point, but we do clean them out typically in the fall and then again in the spring. But that is interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sorry you all were talking and I couldn't hear you. It's kind of funny given some earlier audio challenges.
Well, if no one has other questions, I think we should let you go and have the rest of your evening. But thank you so much. This was wonderful. And I suspect that the 5 remaining spots for the visit to River Point have probably already been snapped up or soon will be. But anyway, thank you so much. We did record this session, so it'll be up on our website on the news page tomorrow or the next day. So if you want to send it along to anyone else or watch it again and do some more bird ID with the audio off to test your skills, or the chat box closed, I guess. But thank you so much, Patrick. This was really, really,
Yes, thank you.
really fun.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for all the work Kriya does. I can't wait to come for a visit one of these days.
We'd love to have you, give you a grand tour.
Yeah. Well, have a
great
good night, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.